So this is a short little video on calculating GDP and specifically on the issue of nominal GDP and real GDP. Now GDP, or gross domestic product, is one of the most important statistics in economics, and GDP is calculated for most countries around the world, and it is used as a way of measuring economic growth in countries to see whether or not life has gotten better over time or not for people living in those countries. Now, whenever calculating GDP, or actually more importantly, when thinking about GDP, it's always important to kind of adjust the GDP statistics from any country for two particular things. One is the effect of inflation, that is changes in the price level from year to year. And the second one is for changes in the population, right? If the GDP of a country gets higher, that's good, but if the population is growing faster than the rate of GDP growth, the people in that country could actually end up being poorer over time. So factoring out inflation, factoring out population growth are key things to do when calculating GDP. So in this sample, I have a hypothetical country, right? Basically only has two goods, boxes of spaghetti and jars of spaghetti sauce, and here are the statistics for the country for year one, and here are the statistics for the country for year two. And you can see the population has increased between the 2 years. You can also see the amounts that the country is producing of each good has also increased. And so the big question at the end of the day is, are the people living in this country better off in year two than they had been in year one? So we're going to go through several steps of solving the problem to get to the solution here. First, we're going to look at nominal GDP and what nominal GDP is all about. Now, nominal GDP is the simplest way to sort of calculate out GDP. I mean, for nominal GDP, right, GDP, what we'll call nominal, all you want to think about is the price of one good times the quantity of that good produced in the country, plus the price of the other good in this case, and the quantity of that good. And if in a real economy we could sequence up all of these different goods and all these different prices and figure out how much the GDP of a country is. In this case, in year one, right? In year one, right, the country is making 5,000 boxes of spaghetti at $1 a pop. And we're also going to add in that they have 2,500 jars of spaghetti sauce at $5 each. And if I do all my math correctly, I should get that the nominal GDP for year one is 17,500. Pretty simple. Now, if I want to talk about year two, I do the same thing again. Year two, nominal, would be, well, in this case, the price of a jar of spaghetti has gone up to $2, so it would be $2. They're making more, 7,000, plus jars of spaghetti sauce are now $6, and they're making more of those, 4,000. And in this case, right, when I put this all together, their total GDP should be 38,000. And I mean, this is outstanding, right? I mean, this would be impressive economic growth for a country to go through in a very short period of time, right? They've gone from having a GDP of 7,500 up to 38,000. But of course, we have population issues, right? How much are the people actually doing well? Well, what we need to actually figure out is GDP per capita. Now again, we're just doing nominal GDP. Let's clean this up a little bit. My nominal GDP, nominal for year one, divided by the population would be 17,500. My population for year 1 is 1,000. And what this means is that my GDP per capita, my nominal GDP per capita, would be $17.50. That kind of gives me a base level to now look at what my nominal GDP per capita would be for year 2. GDP nominal year 2 divided by the population would be 38,000 divided by population now 1,500 right? And if I do this, my new GDP per capita is $25.33. Clearly, at the nominal level of GDP, people are better off in this country. But here's the tricky thing. Are they really better off? Because, as you can see, the prices in year 1 are considerably less than the prices of year 2. I mean, the price of a box of spaghetti has doubled. The price of a jar of spaghetti sauce has gone up by 20%. That means a fair amount of the dollars represented here in year 2 are really the result of inflation. They don't actually show any significant improvement in the quantity, the level of quality that people have in their lives. So what we actually need to do is we need to figure out the real GDP and the real GDP per capita. Now, in doing this, a couple things to keep in mind. First, if I'm going to be talking about real GDP numbers, well, what I need to do is I need to set a base year. And what I'll do is I will set my year 1 as my base year. That's the year that I am measuring from. So in that case, this nominal GDP for population for year 1, well, that actually becomes my real GDP per capita for year 1. The basic idea is that if I'm setting a baseline, 1 year is my baseline, then the GDP nominal of year 1 has to also then be equal to the GDP real of year 1, right? They're identical. So the real GDP for year 1 will be 17,500 and the real GDP per capita is going to be $17.50. The question is, what's it now in year 2? Well, so now I have to calculate out first the real GDP for year 2 and then the per capita for year 2. The process is basically the same, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the quantities from year 2, the amount that they were producing, and I'm going to use the prices from year 1 to, in essence, get rid of the impact of inflation. So, GDP real for year 2, what I'll do is I will take the price of year 1 for boxes of spaghetti, $1, multiply that times the quantity of boxes of spaghetti in year 2, 7,000, add that to the price of jars of spaghetti sauce in year 1, $5, times the numbers of boxes of spaghetti sauce in year 2, which is 4,000. And when I do this out, I should get a real GDP for year 2 of 27,000. Now, note, this is still good. This is much better than, right, by $950 compared to year 1, the GDP real of year 1. But it's nowhere near as high as the 38,000 originally calculated with the nominal GDP. But how are we doing in terms of actually people's lives? If we take our real GDP for year 2 and we factor in the population, what would that be? So my GDP real for year 2 divided by the population in year 2. In this case, I will take my 27,000 and I will divide it by my population, which is 1,500. And the result will be a GDP per capita of $18. So, at the end of the day, once we've stripped out the impact of inflation, the price changes from year 1 to year 2, and we've factored in the change in population, the population in this country is better off in year 2, but only by about 50 cents. That's still something. That is still some level of economic growth. They are better off, but it's not anywhere close to what was suggested by the nominal numbers. And the basic point of this problem is to nail down the idea that nominal GDP tells you something, but it may not actually tell you all that much. You always need to strip out for the impact of inflation and for population change to see what is the real effect on the people who live in a country.